This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
U.S. Congress confirms Biden as next president, but world expresses shock at Capitol Hill violence. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Tanzania in fourth leg of Africa Nations tour. And Ghana's President Akufo-Addo promises to fix the economy as he is sworn in for final term. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, and joining me with the business headlines is Uche.
Thanks, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live, Biz. Nigeria's state oil firm seeks $1 billion to refurbish its largest refining complex. And Libyan businessmen seek China's help to restore their country. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you.
Thank you, Uche. We begin the hour in Washington, D.C., where a joint session of Congress has certified Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. It comes after unprecedented chaos with supporters of President Donald Trump storming the U.S. Capitol, trying to stop the proceedings. The chaos attracted immediate resignations from some members of President Donald Trump's team and sharp reactions from a section of world leaders. CGTN's Jim Spellman is in Washington, D.C. and joins us live from there. Jim, the U.S. is on world headlines for reasons no one could have expected before today. What are the latest developments at this hour after the certification of Joe Biden's election win and, of course, the violence on Capitol Hill?
Well, here on Capitol Hill, it's quiet and calm today. We've got enhanced security measures in place, no sign of any trouble. Far different than we saw about 24 hours ago when this angry mob, fueled by President Trump's rhetoric, made their way into the U.S. Capitol. Since then, I think really today there's a sense of taking stock across the country. We've seen widespread condemnation of this mob and also of President Trump for essentially fueling this with his rhetoric. We're seeing that from Democrats. We're also seeing it from moderate Republicans. All except President Trump's most loyal base seem to be speaking out against him. On Twitter and on Facebook, social media platforms, both of those temporarily suspended President Trump over comments he made that were deemed to be adding fuel to the fire as it was during this crisis yesterday. Facebook now saying that his suspension there is indefinite and will be in place for at least the next 2 weeks. We've seen White House staff resigning throughout the day and even talk of invoking the 25th Amendment. This is a part of the U.S. Constitution that allows the cabinet to basically determine that the president is not fit to serve in office and remove him. The vice president would then be replaced. Several U.S. media outlets reporting that actual cabinet secretaries were discussing this on Wednesday night. It's not likely to happen. A lot of things have to happen before that would be able to go into place. But the mere fact that actual cabinet heads were discussing this openly amongst themselves shows you how severe this situation was in Washington yesterday. I think, though, if there was any turning point, it was just before 4 o'clock in the morning local time here when Vice President Mike Pence was presiding over the Congress and they formally made this determination that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. There, in that, at least were the seeds of a potential path forward that would bring some sense of normalcy and unity back to the country. Back to you.
And Jim, what's next in the presidential transition?
So in 2 weeks' time, on January 20th, is Inauguration Day. That's the next big day on the calendar. There are already moves to have beefed up security for that. It's not clear at this point whether there will be protests planned or attempted at that time. It's typical that there are some protests on that day because of COVID-19. It's going to be a scaled down affair. Joe Biden, when he becomes president, his task was made a little bit easier yesterday in the state of Georgia, where Democrats won those 2 Senate seats. That means they will control the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. That will make it much easier for Joe Biden to get his agenda through, and he will have a big, meaningful agenda. COVID-19, investigating what happened here yesterday at the U.S. Capitol. But we're hearing from some Democrats who say, during the primary, there were more progressive choices, there were younger, perhaps more vibrant choices, but they say that Joe Biden's emphasis on unity, on working across the aisle, make him just the man for the job to try to bring the country together. But be under no illusions that it's going to be easy. President Trump's loyal followers are more angry than ever, and I think a huge question that we'll have to answer in the coming months and years is what will happen to President Trump's base and his followers. Back to you.
All right, Jim, thank you for that. Jim Spellman live for us in Washington. Now, the siege of the Capitol building in the U.S. was a shot heard around the world, while leaders are expressing concern over the peaceful transfer of power and who is to blame. CGTN's Timothy Ulrich reports.
Heads of state and international organizations have been gripped by news from Washington, D.C. Stéphane Dujarric, the spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General, says Antonio Guterres is saddened by the events, adding it's important political leaders impress on their followers the need to refrain from violence. Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General for NATO, said in a tweet the outcome for this democratic election must be respected. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tweeted, "A peaceful transition of power is at the core of U.S. institutions and democracy." German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas took aim at the U.S. president. He called on Trump and his supporters to accept the decision of American voters at last and stop trampling on democracy. Trump ally and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson called the act a disgrace. He says it's now vital there should be a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern expressed concern over democratic rights. She says voting should never be undone by a mob. But some heads of state place the blame on Trump and his followers. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney called it a deliberate assault on democracy by a sitting president and his supporters. Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven says President Trump and several members of Congress bear substantial responsibility. And Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg said a heavy responsibility now rests on Trump to put a stop to this. Reactions range from concerns over a peaceful transfer of power to who's responsible. But what's clear is how seriously world leaders view the storming of the U.S. Capitol. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
Ghana has sworn in President Nana Akufo-Addo to rule the country for another 4 years. It comes after he narrowly won a closely contested election in December. Meanwhile, the opposition candidate John Mahama has petitioned the Supreme Court challenging the Electoral Commission's results of the presidential race, which declared Nana Akufo-Addo as winner. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
15 heads of state arrived in Ghana for the inauguration of President Akufo-Addo. The ceremony was for the first time held at the forecourt of Ghana's parliament in Accra instead of the usual Independence Square. President Akufo-Addo will steer the affairs of government until 2024. He has a huge task of bringing Ghana's economy back on track after suffering a major setback due to the coronavirus pandemic.
The arrival of COVID-19 drove home the lesson to all of us that we have to be self-reliant. The pandemic has emphasized the fact that we cannot continue to be living on edge in a day-to-day economy. This is dangerous for our survival, and it's important that we set up buffers of protection in all aspects of our lives.
President Akufo-Addo's first term in office from 2017 to 2020 saw the implementation of his flagship program, Free Senior High School, and other key infrastructure developments in health and transport. Ghanaians have high expectations for his second term.
The economy is not as good as it seems, and people are really suffering. And all the interventions that he wants to put in place, or whatever he has put in place, and he wants to continue with it, it should impact the lives of people so that the level of poverty, especially unemployment, should be reduced amongst the youth.
My expectation is that he should remain focused, his appointees should all remain focused and, do not take into consideration distractors. Of course, in every country, there are people who wouldn't want to see the country go forward. So they should remain resolute, they should remain focused, and be determined to continue to do what they intend to do.
But that won't be easy. While Nana Akufo-Addo heads the executive arm of government, he faces a legislature led by an opposition member of the National Democratic Congress, Speaker Alban Gbagbin. And while the president's new patriotic party currently has no clear majority, some of the parliamentary polls are being contested in court. If the opposition does win control of the House, that will make it difficult for President Akufo-Addo to get his policies passed. On top of that, he faces a Supreme Court case challenging his legitimacy as leader, brought by his election opponent, former President John Mahama. Akufo-Addo's second term may prove far more challenging than his first. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in Tanzania in his continuing Africa tour. This is the fourth leg of a five-nation tour that has seen him visit Botswana, the DRC and Nigeria. Our correspondent Daniel Kijo is keeping an eye on developments in Tanzania. He now joins us live from Chato Town. Kijo, give us the latest on the Chinese Foreign Minister's tour and what's expected out of his meetings with Tanzanian leaders.
Hi Peninah, thank you for having me. I am speaking to you in Chato Town, the home region or the hometown of President John Pombe Magufuli, where indeed Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived this evening and was received with a jubilation and celebration as Tanzanian government officials and different cultural troops welcomed him at the soon-to-be open Chato Geita Airport. Then he went to the VETA Vocational Center, which is a center for providing vocational training to a lot of Tanzania's youth. This is a youth center that was opened by the Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He cut the ribbon and officially opened the center. Now, this is because China, as you know, and Tanzania have a rich history that spans over 50 decades, a history that started when our father of a nation, Tanzanian father of a nation, Julius Nyerere, signed a friendship treaty with the then chairman of the Chinese party, Mao Zedong. And then since then, for over 50 years now, China and Tanzania have continued to collaborate in the economy, in social issues, and of course, in trying to transform economies for their people. Now, Minister Wang's visit here is meant to sort of cement that 50-year-old friendship that I'm touching on now. He gave a contribution from the Chinese government of $150,000 to the specific VETA or vocational center, which he opened today. This money will go into providing the fishing villages near the center a chance to work on processing and refining products from the Lake Victoria where Chato Town is. Now, after that, he gave a speech, he was very energetic, and he spoke a bit of Swahili there, where a lot of Tanzanians were happy to sort of relate. It was a really good moment that shows a truly, truly deep friendship. What we know is that tomorrow morning early, Foreign Minister Wang will go, I think around 7 in the morning, he will go to Mwaloni fishing village to see exactly the fishing economy is happening around the Lake Victoria region, which is the second biggest lake, I think, in Africa. After that, he will go and have a private talk with President Magufuli in Chato, where he said it's his home, and then they will have a signing of agreements and treaties that will aim to continue the relationship that China and Tanzania have had for many years. In fact, statistics from the Chinese Customs Authority revealed that about the trade volumes between China and Tanzania last year, 2019, were about $208.7 billion. So this is truly a serious relationship that I think both governments are looking to maintain.
All right, Daniel, thank you for that update. Daniel Kijo live for us in Chato Town, Tanzania. Now, before heading to Tanzania, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Botswana, where he met with the Minister for International Affairs and Cooperation and later with the Botswana President. His trip to Botswana coincided with the 46th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Botswana. Mpoeng Poeng, an economist and trade and investment analyst based in Gaborone, spoke to us about what this visit means for Botswana.
When you consider that Botswana and China have had a relationship for 46 years now, actually today is the anniversary of when the relations between Botswana and China started 46 years ago in 1975. It's a really important visit for Botswana because, as it is, Botswana, China actually has an embassy in our capital, which is Gaborone, and we also have an embassy in Beijing. The two countries over the years have signed many bilateral agreements of understanding and even memoranda of understanding covering things as vast as social, economic, technical, and technological cooperation, even human resource development. It's also very important because, you know, in the year 2000, when China started the Forum on China and Africa Cooperation, Botswana was there and has attended all 7 conferences. And a large part of our relations are governed by that. We've had about 40 different China aid projects cover infrastructure development, agriculture, education since that time. Actually, you know, to show the fact that the relationship is bilateral, Botswana itself donated $100,000 to China in 2008 after the Sichuan earthquake. Since 2018, we've had, as I said, the president of Botswana was in Beijing, and he appealed for more relations between Botswana and China, and we've seen a lot of that bear fruit in the past 2 years. Speaking of COVID, we've, you know, as soon as, you know, the first sets of test kits and PPEs that Botswana had were donated from China, and we've been seeing that happen. We've also seen medical personnel that came in to come and assist in Botswana's efforts against COVID, who are coming in from China. Now, what we've also seen, though, which has been interesting, is we've also seen, outside of the COVID relief, we've seen a lot more aid money come to Botswana. Just in the December, the Embassy of China was launching some street lighting, which they had donated to a village in Botswana, and we've seen 2 primary schools as well being built in Botswana in the past few years. So the visit is definitely very significant as the two countries find a way to grow their relationship, since many opportunities and ways that the two countries can work together.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up, South African scientists using ongoing COVID vaccine test against new COVID variants. And Zimbabwe teen using taekwondo to help girls kick out child marriage.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Massive testing is underway in a northern Chinese city. Shijiazhuang is facing the country's biggest outbreak in months, with more than 100 cases in the past few days. Parts of the province, Hebei, are being locked down, as CGTN's Ning Hong reports.
Widespread nucleic acid testing for all Shijiazhuang residents continues. With the city in lockdown and highways temporarily closed, medical staff are stationed at all exits, turning away anyone trying to leave the city. Dr. Wu and her colleagues were called away from home on Monday night. They all haven't been back for over 2 days.
This is the second time I've been caught here. Last time was at the beginning of 2019. I feel a bit more pressure this time around. I love our city and I will fight for it.
There are still people coming here to inquire about leaving, only to be turned back after they learn the latest policies. The pace of the city is slowing down, but the testing is speeding up.
We'll take 10 random samples and test them at the same time. This is routine operation to increase efficiency while maintaining accuracy. Using this method, our lab, along with 3 others, can test 30,000 samples a day.
Ambulances are driving in and out, bringing samples. Medical workers are taking shifts. And the teams of other cities are arriving to help towards the goal of testing over 11 million residents. Ning Hong, CGTN, Shijiazhuang.
In South Africa, ongoing COVID-19 vaccine trials could help scientists determine if vaccines protect against a variant found in the country. The country is currently hosting 3 separate trials. One is by Johnson & Johnson and another 2 are in partnership between AstraZeneca, Wits University and the UK's Oxford University. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela has more.
South Africa spearheaded the first trials in Africa to test the vaccine against COVID-19. The trials are aimed at finding a vaccine that will prevent the virus that causes COVID-19. But challenges persist. In the middle of the trials, South African authorities detected a new, faster-spreading variant of the virus, and it's driving the second wave of the pandemic. It is now also affecting the participants of the vaccine trials here in South Africa.
Because many of the participants in our clinical trials are now being infected with this mutant, in all likelihood, the readout that we get from our clinical trials as to whether the vaccine protects against COVID-19 or not is going to be a readout which indicates whether the vaccine actually protects against this variant. So I think over the course of the next few weeks, we will be much wiser in terms of what is the clinical relevance of the presence of this mutation in the variant that's dominating in South Africa currently.
Vaccines are meant to teach the body to mount an immune response. This includes creating antibodies to fight the coronavirus should it ever encounter it.
So right now we're doing experiments to see what is the differences in terms of the potency of the antibody that's induced by the vaccine against the mutant virus. And we're doing that for 2 or 3 different vaccines currently in South Africa.
The emergence of the variant has set back clinical trials. Professor Marty says it remains unclear when the vaccines will be tested for efficacy and effectiveness.
We've got aspirations right now, but it's really difficult to tell as to exactly what we can expect in terms of vaccine rollout, simply because we don't have vaccine that's imminently going to arrive in South Africa.
While many countries have started rolling out a vaccine, South Africa may only begin its rollout in April, but government says it hopes to begin sooner. South Africa is hoping to vaccinate at least 67% of the population. The intention is to create a herd immunity against the coronavirus. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Health authorities in Nigeria say the country expects to receive Pfizer and BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines by the end of January and begin inoculations immediately. The government plans to import more vaccines as it aims to inoculate 40% of the country's population this year. As CGTN's Deji Badmas reports, Nigeria is racing to curb a spike in COVID-19 infections amid a second wave of the pandemic.
The announcement of the imminent arrival of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine comes at a time when COVID-19 infections are rising rapidly in Nigeria.
The number of new cases per week has tripled. We were running at around 2,000 cases a week. We've now exceeded 6,000 cases a week. 3 weeks ago, if we take 100 samples, we get 4 positives. We are now getting 16 positives.
The importation of the vaccines has been seen as a timely move, given that the country is in the midst of battling a second wave of infections.
In the first phase, through the COVAX facility, we expect to receive approximately 100,000 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine by the end of January. A letter announcing this allocation is being expected from the COVAX facility this week. In the second phase, also through the COVAX facility, Nigeria is expected to secure free delivery of 42 million doses of vaccines, which will be a combination of all the available and approved vaccines currently in the market.
And authorities have already identified who should get the vaccine first.
Priority will be given to frontline health workers, first responders, strategic country leadership, and those that are elderly and with comorbidities.
But some medical experts say getting the vaccines into the country might just be the easy part.
We need to put systems in place to ensure that the health workers are adequately trained, because they need to protect themselves as well. And we also need to put systems in place to make sure that we adhere to the vaccine guidelines, because it's not every patient, it's not everyone that can be vaccinated. There are some contraindications and there are some allergies and things that we have to consider. So we have a lot of training and a lot of setting up SOPs, guidelines to put in place before we actually start before we roll out the vaccination program in Nigeria.
Authorities are also concerned that some people are hesitant to take the jab, with many conspiracy theories circulating in the country.
We already see a situation where there's evidence of resistance to the uptake of the vaccines even before they have arrived the country. It is clear that we, as scientists, public health experts, and even the media, need to do more to educate people on the nature of the vaccines, how they work, and the steps we're taking to ensure that only safe, potent, and effective vaccines are delivered to Nigerians.
There's no doubt that plenty of work lies ahead to enlighten people about the COVID-19 vaccines and their importance, and the authorities hope their experience in successfully carrying out polio vaccinations in the past will help them achieve that target. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Egypt has begun rolling out home care services for COVID-19 patients nationwide. The step follows a surge in infections and mounting pressure on public health services. Egyptian Health Minister Hala Zayed said the initiative should significantly decrease the infections mortality rate. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
Starting this week, the Egyptian Health Ministry says it will dispatch some 20,000 medical teams to check up on non-hospitalized COVID-19 patients. The initiative will depend on the country's 5,400 municipal health services centers and will be supported with 800 medical convoys.
I want to make sure that the cases treated at home don't come to me when they have deteriorated greatly. We've discovered that at least 50 to 60% of the mortalities happen within the first 24 hours after admission to hospitals. They come at a very critical stage and deteriorate much faster. We are to be the first country in the world to do so.
The campaign will start with the most infected districts. Medical teams will measure patients' vitals and loan oximeters so those at higher risk can monitor their oxygen saturation. The health minister says the first visit to all patients should be accomplished within 2 weeks.
There is a surge in infection. While Egypt has only 320 hospitals that receive COVID-19 patients, the initiative will definitely lift some pressure off hospitals. It could decrease mortality rates because now those with deteriorating conditions can be identified. There is a channel for them to find proper instructions and services.
One of the tasks of that initiative is to ensure patients have access to standard medications recommended by the government.
An estimated 90% of COVID-19 patients in Egypt are being treated at home. Most of them get diagnosed in the private sector and follow a treatment protocol at home, so they are not part of the official infection figures.
Official figures have so far registered more than 145,000 COVID-19 infections in total. The past week has seen a continuous drop in new daily infections. On Wednesday, health authorities announced 1,007 new cases and 57 deaths. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
A teenage taekwondo enthusiast in Zimbabwe is using the sport to rally young girls and mothers against child marriage. Women's groups have warned that early marriages could be increasing as COVID-19 keeps children away from school. Joy Kiruki with the details.
17-year-old Natsiraishe Maritza is a taekwondo student. She has been a martial arts fan since the age of 5. She's using taekwondo to give girls in an impoverished community a fighting chance at life.
I do taekwondo, and with it I want to create an early marriage-free Africa. I want to help stop drug abuse because most of the teenagers are getting involved into drugs, so I want to occupy them with taekwondo.
Natsiraishe's students line up outside her parents' home in the Epworth settlement. Some are as young as 4 and are now married. They follow her every instruction.
Since I was in primary school, most of my friends got impregnated and they got into marriages. And then when I went to high school, I realized that some of them now have kids and they're facing problems. These early marriages have led to gender-based violences, and they are still kids. They cannot look after a family, so they're being beaten, they're experiencing abuses, and this is really paining me.
In 2016, Zimbabwean law prohibited early marriage till the age of 18. Prior to that, legislation allowed girls to marry at 16. But according to the United Nations Children's Fund, 30% of girls in Zimbabwe are still being married off before reaching 18.
With the young ladies and the young girls, I'm going to talk to them about the challenges they're experiencing, and also I'm going to use my sport, taekwondo, to encourage them not to get into marriages and early pregnancies.
Natsiraishe is hoping to increase the confidence of her students through her association called Vulnerable Underaged People's Auditorium. A recent ban on public gatherings imposed by the government after a new COVID-19 surge has forced Natsiraishe to suspend the sessions. She's however hopeful they will resume training once the restriction is lifted. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Let's now catch up with the day's business news. We cross over to Uche for the latest.
Thanks, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Nigeria's state oil firm seeks $1 billion to refurbish its largest refining complex. And Libyan businessmen seek China's help to restore their country.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
And let's start off in Nigeria. The country's state oil firm NNPC is in talks with trading firms to refurbish its largest refining complex in the city of Port Harcourt. Now, the company is seeking to raise around $1 billion. If the financing is concluded, the long overdue rehabilitation of the refinery should reduce Nigeria's hefty fuel import bill. This would mark Nigeria's second oil-backed financing since the COVID-19 pandemic derailed investors, as we saw fuel demand dropping due to lockdowns. Now, the money will be repaid over 7 years through deliveries of Nigerian crude and products from the refinery once the refurbishment is complete. Cairo-based Afrexim Bank is leading the financing method. And the Confederation of Libyan Businessmen in Tunisia have called for stronger cooperation with China in the rebuilding of Libya. The investors believe boosting economic ties between Beijing and Tripoli will have a positive impact on Libyan businesses and enterprises. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
Members of the Libyan-Tunisian Business Council invited Chinese companies to invest in Libya and to boost exports in order to promote economic development in the region.
Chinese companies have always worked in Libya. The unrest in our country has prevented some major investments. Now Libya and China can boost their cooperation, especially trade and other sectors, because China is advanced in all domains. China has the technology and the know-how. We invite Chinese enterprises to enter the Libyan market. China is welcome in Libya.
Libyan entrepreneurs added that China can play a central role in the reconstruction of infrastructure, which was damaged following 10 years of war and armed conflicts.
China is a great nation. I'm a strong supporter of China for over 20 years. China's first projects in Libya were successful. An increased Chinese presence will benefit Libya's economy. China deserves to have a big share in Libya's reconstruction. China is powerful and friendly. I'm proud of China's achievements.
Analysts noted that the Tunisian economy will benefit from the expansion of Chinese investment in Libya.
The whole economy and industry of border regions between Tunisia and Libya will grow because the market demands are huge. Tunisians are familiar with the Libyan market. The reconstruction effort requires string cooperation. A free trade area could be created to revive the regional economy.
In July 2018, China and Libya signed a memorandum of understanding on jointly building the Belt and Road during the 8th ministerial meeting of the China-Arab States Cooperation Forum, which was held in Beijing. Tunisian economists assert that the successful experience of Chinese enterprises in Africa and the whole world paves the way for stronger presence in Libya. The launch of a new business dynamic with China and the reconstruction effort will revive the economies of the whole North African region, as well as in Libya's neighbors. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, let's shift focus now. More and more plastic is being produced globally every year. And despite efforts to promote sustainability, much of it still goes to waste, clogging up waterways and damaging local environments. While CGTN's John Beaver spoke to a man in England who's asking people to spend a little more time on the problem.
On every beach, in every part of the world, you'll find plastic. Either dropped or washed up, it's a global problem. Enter a man looking for a global solution, leading the fight against plastic at a local level. Martin Dorey started the 2-Minute Foundation.
Looks like seaweed.
Which urges people to spend 2 minutes of their time picking up plastic on beaches, parks, or wherever they may be. And he's also hoping to change people's mindsets.
Maybe people will start to think about the plastic they consume, and we'll start to shop in a different way, and we'll start to consume in a different way, and we'll start to realise that we actually can't carry on as we are, that we have to slow down, we have to have some kind of circularity because we're running out of resources, and the natural environment can't cope with the waste we're putting into it.
The idea for the charity came to him 7 years ago, and cleaning one beach spread into a global initiative. There are hundreds of litter pickup stations and thousands of people involved.
The scale of the problem is staggering. Every year more plastic is being produced globally, and much of it isn't disposed of properly or recycled. Recent surveys in the UK have found that for every mile of beach there are now on average 5,000 items of plastic waste.
The coronavirus pandemic has seen masks, gloves and more food packaging used, but it's ever-shrinking microplastics that are an ever-growing problem. A sieve is the best tool when it comes to cleaning up what hasn't already been eaten by sea life. But rather than feel helpless, campaigners say consumers should feel empowered.
So I think the main message overall has to be reduce. We need to reduce our reliance on plastic, whether that's that we buy reusable masks that we wash and reuse, or whether it's that we buy food that isn't packaged. Make that choice. Make the choice between the bananas that are in a plastic bag and the bananas that are not in a plastic bag. Make that choice and just realise that every single thing that you put into your bin ends up in the environment some way.
With coronavirus vaccines becoming a reality and people thinking more about their own impact, the aim is to use considerably less plastic and tidy up the planet 2 minutes at a time. John Beaver, CGTN, Bude in southwest England.
Now, the annual Consumer Electronics Show, or the CES, brings together businesses and tech lovers in Las Vegas around this time of the year. Now, the ongoing pandemic in the United States has prompted one of the world's biggest tech conferences to now shift to an all-digital format that would have otherwise taken years.
More than 170,000 attended the 4-day show in January 2020, before COVID-19 began to spread across the U.S. The event switched to a digital-only setting in 2021 is another blow for Las Vegas, which, like all other states, is dealing with the coronavirus outbreak and stay-at-home orders. CES organizers, the Consumer Technology Association, give a preview of what to expect from the downsized 4-day event.
Been challenged, but we've also had opportunities. And the opportunity has been, as a world, we've moved to this digital transformation quicker, and by several years we would have otherwise. We've been forced to adapt, and we have. And so with CES. We decided to make CES digital only in July because we wanted our customers to adopt quickly, and we saw the decision as an important one.
The digital venue, specially created by Microsoft, will let users message other attendees, schedule meetings, and watch hours of live hosted content and product demos. Shapiro says the CES online platform was a 7-figure investment with Microsoft. He also expects health technology and work-from-home gadgets to make center stage at this year's CES.
What we expect to see, of course, in addition to the great changes in mobility, the shift towards the electric car and self-driving, and other changes, we will see obviously a great focus on healthcare technology, but also a focus on broadband and things you can do for your home, not only for your home office to make it better, but also everything in your home that has to do with technology.
Registration fee for the virtual-only event is $499 from January 4th. CES Executive Vice President Karen Chapka defended the pricing, saying the event will provide ample business opportunities for participants.
We also know that there is over 100 hours of conference programming that you're going to be able to view. We also have all of our exhibitors putting on additional programming as part of the platform. And there's still the ability to connect over, over the 30 days beyond the show. So, quite frankly, there is a lot of business opportunity here that companies can take advantage of, attendees can take advantage of.
CES isn't the only tech event that's being interrupted by COVID-19. Its European counterpart, Germany's IFA, runs for 6 days and drew nearly 250,000 people in 2019. Last September, it ran in limited form for only 3 days, and there was no public access to the event. Trade shows are vital for networking, showcasing new technology and sealing deals. But the Events Industry Council says such shows are also big business, accounting for $2.5 trillion in global spending. The 4-day Digital International Consumer Electronics Show begins on January 11th. Shen Li, CGTN.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up later on Global Business Africa, the World Bank projects that Zimbabwe will grow its income by 14% in 15 years through the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We'll, of course, discuss that. All that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live. Plenty more coming up, including this. Cairo's Museum of Illusions promises to confuse the senses as it entertains and educates.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Over in Egypt, a museum of illusions has opened in Cairo, promising visitors a journey that will confuse one's senses. While the sights may be confusing, museum managers say behind each illusion is a fascinating scientific explanation, making it a learning experience as well. Tanyabo tells us more.
The entrance is ordinary, a simple portal into a building. But the museum in Cairo holds many visual delights. Visitors appear to walk under a swimming pool fully dressed without getting wet. They can also step a tunnel where the ground sways under their feet or stand upside down in a rotation. But this is all just pure illusion.
Honestly, this is a new experience. This is the first time to have something like this in Egypt. It is suitable for all ages, the young and old. They will have fun. Illusions are all I see for the first time.
The Cairo Museum of Illusion offers nearly 70 illusions that test the senses, mind and psyche. But everything has its own scientific, mathematical or psychological explanation. Museum managers say the goal is to discover why eyes perceive things that are incomprehensible.
This place was called a museum because there are more than 70 illusions here. They felt that the word museum explains the concept of someone who comes and learns new things about mathematics, science, and psychology as well.
You enter and you see things that are not real, but at the same time there is an explanation that makes you understand why you see things this way.
The illusions also include holograms and an infinity room. Visitors include groups of friends or families that wish to enjoy a new experience together. It is also open for children. CGTN.
And ahead in sports, we look back at Egypt's glorious football achievements in 2020 and what to expect in the new year.